Welcome to Conversations. Some time ago, a friend of mine, I found out had hearing problems, and I wanted to see if I could get some help for him. He was a young kid, and I called Partnership Healthcare, I believe. And anyway, I talked to a lot of people to get through, and there was one person who just seemed all full of energy, and I figured, God, this is going to be some young kid. He's so energetic. And then I went to a dinner one night and met this person, and we got to talking, and we were the same people. And he was complimenting me on trying to get help for my friend, and I was telling him how good he was at representing the organization. And that person is on the show with me today. This is Mr. Joe Blackman. Hi, Joe.
Greg, thanks for having me.
Let's not pull any punches, Joe.
Yeah, okay. Let's get mean with people.
Let's tell them what we're going to do here.
Okay.
We want to tell people that they can get health care even if they don't have money, and that's what your organization is. I always get confused because there's Partnership Home Health Care, and then, but you are Partnership?
Partnership Health Center.
Okay. And you are located?
323 West Alder, which is right before the underpass heading north on Orange Street towards the interstate. Some people have referred to us as the county clinic.
Okay.
Because
And
we
you're in
are
a
associated
new
with the
building.
county health department, right next to the old county health department building.
Before that building, what was going on?
I believe they were trying to provide community health care through the health department on the second floor of the health department building. And as I remember correctly, there was just not enough room, no space really to provide any services at all.
I was up there for shots or something, and they were trying to do child care and anyone who dropped in,
Right.
and it was. And so now there's a whole new building. We talked about grants, so let's talk about the funding for this. Some of it comes from county, I assume.
Some, I would imagine, yes.
And you are, in some sense, I should be asking the questions. Who makes the decisions for Partnership Healthcare?
Karen Collins is the executive director.
Okay.
And she works with a board that I believe is not just one of those boards that shows up every couple of months and here's what's going on. I believe they're a very active board, and I believe the board also includes a number of physicians in the community. They're very active in writing grants, specific grants for treatment of specific problems or illnesses or diseases, what have you. And I believe that's what's really changed the face of the county clinic and turned it into what Partnership is now, is that ability to get separate grant monies into the clinic.
It has turned into kind of a big deal.
It's a big clinic.
Yeah. From what I used to go up and get shots and things, and it was just a little rabbit warren. This has got space. What about staffing for the new facility?
2 full-time MDs. We have 2 full-time physician's assistants. They each have a team of medical assistants or LPNs or RNs who work with them through their shifts. So, golly, we can see a lot of people during the day, and there's just no question about it.
Let's talk about the range of help you can get. 2 physicians can't diagnose everything. What happens when a problem comes up that is out of their range?
Or for the physician's assistants, for that matter, as well, right? Even though they are under direct supervision of the MDs, we can diagnose a lot of things. What we can't typically do is treat a lot of things within the clinic. And if we suspect a diagnosis, let's say of a neurological nature, we'll probably have to get one of the local neurologists in the community, an expert in the field, to see that patient. And that's where part of my work comes in, and that's how you managed to get me on the phone, I think, is you were looking for a specific type of help for a friend. What I will do is follow one of our doctor's orders and attempt to get a consult set up with a specialist in the community, either for a neurological exam or for an orthopedic exam in the case of somebody who might have a broken foot or something along those lines, or may require surgery. I have a coworker who helps and establishes relationships with surgeons so their patients can get surgery.
For a long time, people in the community who were poor had, would wait, and if they thought it was serious enough, would go to the emergency room at the hospital, whether they could pay for it or not. But they'd hold out and they'd hold out. I mean,
Oh yeah.
somehow that mentality that everything must be paid for and that this society doesn't owe us anything. How does this fit into that?
Well, by the way, people still do that.
Well, yes, I'm sure.
Where we fit in is hopefully nobody is going to be turned away from the clinic for lack of funds. That's one of our mandates, is nobody gets turned away. We will see any patient. Whether they're working, have insurance, or not makes no difference. If they're working, we develop a sliding scale fee agreement with them based on their income. If they're not, I don't know the specifics, but I know they don't get turned away, and I know that they're not going to walk out of there with a bill that they can't afford.
So, because of that, if you have a condition and that you're nurturing, you should go to the clinic first rather than waiting until
Oh, absolutely.
you're falling down sick and running 105 temperature and that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, it's common sense, and yet in our society, it's really hard to let common sense kick in because there are genuine fears that there's going to be this gigantic bill that I'm never going to be able to deal with if I go get checked, that sort of thing. And those are legitimate concerns, but I think by visiting partnership, we can at least address the financial end of it, that there shouldn't be any reason to not get medical care because of financial issues. And that's the point of our clinic.
That's great. And how you talked about grants. You're getting a lot of extra. What are some of these specific grants that interest you?
I work with the Ryan White program, which is primarily, and with Title III, which is to provide medical funding support for people with HIV and AIDS. That would be one. We have a separate grant for breast and cervical cancer diagnosis and treatment. We have separate grants for diabetes treatment. Actually, I'm so new there, I don't even have a handle on how many grants are being written or have been written, but it's just apparent.
Well, you mentioned one to me
that's a big part of our organization.
You mentioned one to me that interested me was for working with homeless people.
Ah, right. Sorry. How easy it is to forget. We were just talking about it this morning. That is a brand new grant. It is a large one, and it's large enough that it entails a team of 4 people that I know of right now, including a mid-level provider. This will be a nurse practitioner who will do the primary medical work, although our MDs will be available to these homeless patients. The aim of the grant is to make sure that anyone who is designated or identified as being homeless in the Missoula area can be targeted and given general medical care, period, immediately.
That were targeted. You want to?
Well, just have to identify themselves as being homeless. And what we've done, not me particularly, but the workers within the homeless grant have done is gone to the places where homeless people are typically found. The Poverello Center, the women's shelter, Joseph Residence, the YWC, Battered Women's Shelter. And there's even talk about reaching under bridges and whatnot to find people who are genuinely homeless, find out if they have medical concerns, and to make sure that they get in to see a doctor.
I worked at the Oxford for years and years So I know a lot of people like that, or they've come through my life. There are, goodness, there are places up in the mountains where the hardier congregate and backpack and stay in the summer. If you walk down the certain railroad tracks, you can, in the summer, they have built homes in the shadows of the branches that overhang. And it's a pretty large population, larger than a lot of people in my church
about
would.
the Kim Williams Trail.
Yeah, I would like to acknowledge. So I think that's wonderful that is there.
I think it's an absolutely marvelous idea. Just knowing that the grant monies were available, I think is fantastic. And then to have an administration at our clinic that's able and willing to get a hold of those grant monies is I think, pretty spectacular.
What do you say to the people who say, well, giving them medical care will make Missoula a spot for ne'er-do-wells and drifters to hang out?
Well, they've been saying that for years. It's not going to change that at all.
I thought I'd throw that at you just to see how you would react.
Yeah, I've been hearing that for years and years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of those times at the Oxford, my teeth started going bad, and I was losing them one at a time. And all of a sudden, I was out of work, and someone told me that I could get my teeth taken care of through the state. And I thought, well, that's great. And my parents have bad teeth, and I watched them go one by one. So, okay, I wanted them all out. And I did that. I had my teeth extracted. I had false teeth put in. And it was a godsend. I mean, it made jobs, easier, all that sort of thing. Is that available today?
In a very limited sense. We do have a dental clinic. We have, I believe, 4 dental chairs in our clinic. We have an x-ray machine. What we don't have is a full-time dentist. We have a number of community dentists who volunteer blocks of their time, and they actually volunteer it. They donate their time to our clinic to come in, and yet I was talking with Cheryl, the appointment secretary today. We're 1,400 encounters behind.
Do you have any idea what that is in time waited?
Oh my goodness! Well, it's too long. Mm-hmm. In any case, that's 1,400 person waiting list.
Let this go, or they just decided that people's teeth were not a priority?
Well, I can't really tell you what happens in Helena. I can only see what happens after the decisions have been made in Helena. The decisions that I've seen in terms of, and I'm basically looking at Medicaid spending here being one of the basic issues at hand, is that the state hasn't modernized their Medicaid billing rates for some services in years, and dentistry is one of those. The state wants to pay dentists really an absurd rate for their services. Well, dentists have said, we're not going to do this. We won't provide dental care for people with Medicaid based on those rates. If you raise them and put them into the context of the 21st century, perhaps we could do some business. Well, the state isn't willing to do that. And I think that's created an incredible backlog of people, whether they have, and Medicaid people are low income anyway, to begin with. And you include in a population of people who have no insurance and no resources. Makes access to dentists even harder yet.
I knew one young kid who had something like 17 cavities, and he was trying to pay for them one by one by one. And on a job, that was barely getting by anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So the dentistry
There are probably not enough dentists to go around, for starters. But I think the real issue is there's not enough money to pay dentists. If there were more, I don't know how you'd look at it, you know, if there were grants or if the state could find some way to increase the amount of Medicaid allotted for dental care, maybe that would make a difference, but they haven't.
I'm sorry, miss.
That's a, it's just, it's an emotional issue for me to continue to see the same group of people actually be disregarded, I suspect, or discounted in some fashion. You know.
As long as we're on a high note here.
Oh, high note.
Let's
okay.
move on to what you called to me the other day, the other crisis in Montana's health system, and that was mental care. I'm vaguely aware of some of what was going on a few years back, and they tried to put it to some big conglomerate that was going to take care of everything, and then it failed, and somewhere in there I lost interest and it kind of slipped away.
Yeah.
What happened?
I think everyone who didn't have some sort of mental health problems lost interest in it as well. The issue again was Medicaid and Medicaid expenditures and the concern on the part of the state that the expenditures were too high and that they needed to be controlled somehow or lowered or something. The decision in Helen, and this is on the part of the legislature and I think at the direction of the governor, I'm convinced it was at his direction, was that you simply turn the Medicaid money over to private industry. They're more efficient than government is at managing these sorts of things, so we can certainly count on them to reduce the Medicaid expenditures, simply because they're more efficient. Well, it turned into a comedy of errors, and by the time I think they finally asked the third HMO to leave the state mental health system.
They're consecutively or?
They'd successively been bought out by the other, I think is what it amounted to. Is that the state was finally forced to ask the company to leave because they really hadn't accomplished anything except perhaps leave the state with a lot of money that could have otherwise been used in direct services to clients. And what's happened at this point now is that there is even less money being allocated to the mental health system than there was prior to that. And that must be 6 years back at this point. The fees, I think, are established in such a point similar to the fees in dentistry, to where they really don't reflect the market value for fees right now. Some therapists will still use the state mental health program, but very few psychiatrists will, if any, unless they're subcontracted through a mental health center, for example. I can't think of any psychiatrists in Missoula who are contracted with a state plan because the rates are unrealistic. And they'd actually refused a contract with the state prior to that whole HMO contract thing. And yet the state went ahead with it anyway. I think most everyone knows that, don't they?
No, I don't think it. A lot of people do know that.
Oh.
That's why I do shows like this.
Oh, okay.
And so mental health problems, well, let's go back to the clinic. People come into you. Are you just physical health, or do you try to find some way to help them if they're having emotional problems?
We try, but we can't because we're not trained to do it. We don't have a psychiatrist in the clinic, and that's primarily what we would need. I'm not sure what to say about that. We do treat a number of our patients for depression, but we're treating that as a secondary condition to some primary illness that we're treating, maybe diabetes. But we really can't, nor administratively are we willing to pick up the slack to provide mental health care. We can't. We won't.
What are some of the successes of the program? What do you do well? What does the state do well, do you think? One or pick two from column A and one from column B.
The recent elections notwithstanding, huh?
Yeah.
Well, the successes. Well,
it's
not everyone falls through the cracks. Okay. Unfortunately, right now in the state of Montana, if you're mentally ill and if you don't have Medicaid, you're going to fall through the cracks. If you have Medicaid, you're probably going to get pretty good treatment. Unfortunately, if you have Medicaid and you need dental care, you're not going to get it because, again, the state they just haven't modernized the rates they're willing to pay for dental treatment. On the good side, I don't know. I've worked with people in all facets of human health care in Missoula for about the past 20 years. And the good news is there are a lot of really dedicated people out there helping people who don't have assets, who need a lot of help, regardless of whether it's for physical health or mental health or for social needs like housing. There are really terrific people in Missoula to help out with that. Do you notice I haven't said anything particularly good about Helena?
All right.
I'm really fed up with state government. We elect those people to take care of us, and they're not doing it. That's their job, and they're not doing it.
I have some connection with state government. Why do you think that is? I mean, these are not, I don't run into very many evil people who want to see people suffer.
Oh, I don't assume people are necessarily evil until I've got to witness their behaviors firsthand for a number of months. Maybe ignorance. Maybe they really don't know what it is that they're dealing with. I don't know. But geez, Greg, you know, in the mental health thing 6 years ago, when they were proposing this plan with an HMO to manage the mental health plan, the Montana Psychiatric Association said, don't do this. If you do, we're not going to be a part of it. Well, you can't run a mental health plan without psychiatrists. And this was, in effect, every psychiatrist in Montana saying, don't do this. This is not a plan that we're going to participate in. And they did it anyway. Now, I can't explain that behavior. I don't know why that is. They say they're driven by good intentions, you know, to save money and make it fiscally viable, but it doesn't make sense when you bring it down to this level and see what happens.
And I think there are other things built into the system that just sort of opt against certain kinds of, I don't know. When we did Outspoken Magazine, we got invited to a meeting in the health department. And they were trying to figure out they were trying to figure out how to build a better gay community, you know, to prevent AIDS and this and that. And the young man that I developed it with turned to me and said, isn't that what we're doing? And the point being that these people could not see that right in front of them was a proposal that could have and would prove to do exactly what they said they were trying to do. Now, I've seen that in HIV prevention, that you get these strange things that, I don't know, somehow things get overlooked, or there's a perspective that shifts, or rescue me here.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what I'm rescuing you from.
Well,
we've talked before, and you know I have some fairly harsh opinions. One that speaks, I think, to some extent for this is that as a society, I think we have a tendency to denigrate the powerless. I don't know why that is. It's sort of like a variation on a German concept of Schadenfreude. You know, you have a lot of fun at someone else's misery. But in this case, you know, I see lawyers working over rape victims in courtrooms and thinking, what the heck is this all about? I see congressmen saying that homeless people, you know, are the scourge of our society and something needs to be done with them. And I hear other congressmen saying, hell, just give them laptops, you know, and let them enter the generation. They don't seem to understand. I don't believe that they're aware of what it's like to be poor.
I don't think they're aware that the poor or whatever are people like them. Or I find this as someone with HIV, that all of a sudden I become objectified when that comes up. I become part of a class as opposed to an individual. Mm-hmm. You and I were together by accident at lunch the other day, and mm-hmm. 3 healthcare workers were having a discussion. I was invited to sit in because I knew everybody, but right. All of us, now I was somebody they know, but all of a sudden it would be, well, what do you think of that, Greg? And the tone of voice was just like, as one of those.
Yeah, I saw it more as a peer. At least that's the way I was responding to it, that you probably know more about it than we do, so why are we making all the noise? Why don't we ask you?
Maybe it's in my head, but I do feel that sometimes it just, we objectify people who are different, who are poor, well, and we create myths about them when there are all kinds of reasons to be in poverty, and that we ourselves could be there. And I get in these meetings where they're talking, for instance, about intravenous drug users, as if they were far distant. And every once in a while I'll say, well, I could be an intravenous drug user. The idea that all of these people, that HIV-positive people, the drug users, that the poor, all live out there and they're sort of separate from us.
Yeah, and they live right next door to you.
And we can figure out how to handle their problems. And once you decide that you can handle the problems of a group that you don't share close association with, you're in for big trouble.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it.
I wandered away there.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Well, I should probably say at this point that I do have some rather liberal views, and that this is best that, the administration of Partnership Health, is that they may be watching this, is that I'm not
Nobody
trying to
watches.
represent
There's one lady who watches who tells
administrative platform of the clinic.
I think it's great that we have the clinic, and the whole purpose of this show is to get out the message that if you're suffering, if you don't have health insurance, mm-hmm. That is the place to go, and that you don't have to. And you don't have to be ashamed, I hope. There is this whole kind of thing that you have to buy everything in this society, and you must therefore buy medical care and legal care, and there's something kind of wrong, and you should feel bad about going to see if there's a way of getting something for mm-hmm. free.
Absolutely not. Anecdotally, I mean, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was asked to meet with a man probably my age and his wife, who were in the position that we discussed, where he had neglected a medical condition for so long that he just couldn't neglect it anymore. And it was all out of financial concerns. I can't afford this at this point. But it had gotten to the point where I couldn't afford not to anymore. And I don't know that he was ashamed, but he was definitely really concerned. I don't know where else to go, was basically what he was saying.
I think there's sort of a kind of anxiety, too. The first time I ever had to go to a lawyer and fight somebody in court, I was petrified. Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about young people, to not only go to a doctor, but not to have any money, and it seems so hard, I really worry about the young people who let these things slide.
Well, yeah, if you're talking about somebody who's in his mid-50s and you know, is survived, you know, as long as he has and is still avoiding medical care just based out of financial concerns, golly, you know, it really ought not to be necessary. So if you're a Missoula County resident,
I think I should ask
Yeah.
you, one of those
Yeah.
big final questions.
well, don't, because
Wrap
we
it
should
up.
talk about HIV counseling and testing too.
Oh, all right.
'Cause we do that.
You do that.
We do that. It's basically a donated service. We don't ask for the cost of the lab fees or any of that sort of thing. We do ask for a donation, a $10 donation. Somebody was going to write me out a check today for the cost of the lab tests, and I told him he probably didn't have enough money in his account to cover it. But we test for HIV and for hepatitis C Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And if somebody wanted to find out specifically about that, they could just give me a call at the
Are you one of the places that has confidential testing?
Oh, it's confidential. It's anonymous as well.
Okay. Because the law's changed, and except for a few places that are confidential, they are reported in most places now. Okay, the big question. What do you think we should be doing? I mean, if you could rearrange the plan and change it yourself, and also, where do you think it will go, realistically? Where are we headed?
Which
and where
one
would
first?
you like? Well,
Which one first? Well,
all right, where are we headed, and where would you like us to head?
gosh, I'm afraid of where we're headed because I don't see a lot on the political horizon that's going to change what I see as being a basic weakness of our society right now, and that's a reasonable distribution of resources. I don't know that we've figured out how to do that. I don't know that we're even interested in doing that. It seems to me the interest is in somehow figuring out how to get an increasingly smaller population of people who have control of most of the money, controlling even more of it. That seems to be the general trend. And I don't know that that's helping society in general. In fact, I doubt it very much that that's helping us. So if I had hopes for the future, it would be that we would somehow figure out that, contrary to what Michael Douglas says, greed is not good. It's not a national pastime. We need to figure out how to distribute our resources to all of our citizens, and maybe all over the darn world, a lot better than what we're doing right now.
I think I want to stop you right there.
Yeah?
Hey, thanks for coming in.
You're welcome. My pleasure,
Okay.
Greg. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.